I mean, it couldn't be more obvious that this is a group of people politically trying to control people and to train them into being sheep. And this has been true for both the far left and far right. This is what the far left and far right do. Fascism, more generally, like right now, in the United States, our government is left-wing fascist. It's filled with Marxists, and they're very intolerant, and they spend most of the time planning up these rules to lock you down and to get you to accept it. And we keep, you can see it rolling through every few months. It was, COVID, that lockdown, but now the next thing, it will be the climate. If we get a hurricane, we have to lock everybody down and keep everybody very confined because of climate change, which is everything. So this is classic tyrannical far left and far right stuff. Right now, it's the far left that's doing it. It's the far right isn't doing this at all now. It hasn't, in the past. A lot of people forget this because a lot of young people don't have any memory of this whatsoever. There are people who want to control other people, and then there are people who are willing to be controlled, very passive, and then there's people that don't want to be messed with at all, but have no drive to control anybody. These are the libertarians, right? The far left and far right have classically been great vehicles to turn it into a political ideology, but it's really about getting even and turning the world upside down. Now, anybody in my age who had lived through the problems in Eastern Europe, with the Soviets and those various things, for them back and forth between Nazis and then the communists and then most of the communists, they can see it coming. So anybody my age and a bit older can see what's going on now. They've said, well, yeah, this is what happened when the Soviets came in and when the Red Brigade came in, and they see it. But if you're really young, it's like, well, no, we should be controlling people. These people they can make us sick, or they can use too much gas. You see, they should be controlled. And so I think there's a lot of this in a very personal, individualized way. There are people who want to control other people and people who don't want to control other people. And so there's this personalized sort of, personal politics that become more than group politics and groupthink behaviors, which is what we're seeing now. So the ability to make you can only go within 2 miles, it makes no sense, right? There's no medical sense, but it's like, see, I can control you, and I'm going to get you used to this. I'm going to keep throwing things, climate crisis, virus crisis, poverty crisis, homeless, all of these, we keep rotating them to keep you in constant fear.
I think you've raised quite a few really important points. And one of the points that you raised was something I think we've touched on in a previous conversation that we've had, which was, it's more the children of immigrants who may still be my age. I'm 31, and I have no lived experience of being under a dictatorial regime or an authoritarian regime, but my parents do. And then you have stories of other immigrants who are starting to see a flare-up of post-traumatic stress responses in their parents or in their grandparents, because what they're seeing right now seems to be very similar to what they have experienced in the past. Whereas people who don't have that, even within their parents or grandparents, have never experienced these sorts of rules. They're less likely to have an idea that this is what's actually going on. In fact, my father said that what he's seeing right now appears worse in certain elements than what he grew up in communist Romania in terms of the controlling behavior. Now, of course, he has his own story, and you have to question how much of that is his post-traumatic stress being re-triggered and seeing things wider than they are, or is this actually what's going on? Is it actually worse than what they lived through in certain controlling elements? So I think that's a really important point that you bring up. The other point is that always gets me scratching my head. What is the end game? What is a government that would like to control certain elements of their their populace, what is their end game? Why are they trying to do this? And this is where people get into what are termed conspiracy theories, and it's like, oh, this is what they're. I mean, the other day we had the New South Wales Chief Health Officer refer to the New World Order in her speech and say, this is how it's going to be in the New World Order.
I saw that it was slowed down. The New World Order. But you know, there's a lot of people who want to get even. You know, if you feel like a loser, something in your life, the easiest thing to blame is some white heterosexual male. That's, you know, because everybody's had a boss who's like that. Isn't he the guy that tormented you? Didn't he look like that? Didn't he look like somebody like, I don't know, Trump or something? You know, everybody has one of those. And you know, a lot of people don't realize they just have trouble with bosses, and it has nothing to do with the white heterosexual big male who owns country clubs. Well, then they find out when they get a little older that all bosses are like that, and they hate all bosses. So their problem is about bosses. But you know, the higher probability is running into somebody like that who's a white heterosexual male conservative, I guess. And so it's a very handy thing, ready-made to go. And it's ready-made because aren't you angry? What, you know, and everybody has some bone to pick. Not everybody, but a lot of people do. And what the demonizing factor is, don't you want to control those people so they don't harm you, so you can get ahead in the job? Remember who did that to you? And so if you're young and you've never seen how people get manipulated, especially this sort of psychopathic manipulation of people's emotions, then you don't know. It's like, no, I don't want people doing bad things. I don't want them spreading disease. I don't want them polluting the air. And they don't realize that the fix, which is making you do something and being obedient, becomes always the worst thing, always. And because, you know, we've had about 120 experiments in this time, in, you know, certainly communism, every one of them absolutely disaster. But it gets young people go for it because they have no sense of human nature as it not no sense, of course they do, but they don't know that how it just keeps methodically dividing and getting larger and larger, and it draws in power hungry people. And it's not just, you know, it happens on the left and the right, but it's also some people are just like that, independent of politics, but then it drives their politics. So I can see it because because I talk to a lot of people like you do, and of every age and generation. I teach classes of young people, and we talk about these things, and you can see that they don't realize how they can be had, and that they're being worked and they're being manipulated. And you know, the Nazis were able to do it. The communists were able to do it. Even you remember in Japan throughout the early 20th century, and that whole culture, they got everybody to be obedient, and that was what, you know, this is what the good thing is you become obedient. And you know how long it took, and the great thing about it is that the kind of the slow percolating revolution in Japan, where people said, I'm not going to listen to these, listen to these people anymore. I'm not going to play that game. It turned out they were women, young women, from the late teens to early to mid 20s. That's who told these guys to go blow it out their ass. They said, we're not going to do it.
Oh, wow.
We're not going to do it. And that's who led it, you know, and that was mostly in the 1990s. It happened, and more in the 1920s. So the girls and then the women, young women in Japan, led that sort of cultural revolution. And in a sense, it was just like, we're not going to play this anymore. We're not going to play this game that you're trying to do.
This is interesting. Okay, I want to pick up on that one because recently now they've reversed it because there was a lot of public pressure, which makes you think a lot of this is about public pressure rather than the scientific evidence that they have to back up certain rules that they put out. But they banned families from taking their kids to the park.
Sure.
They stopped all of that. Skate parks.
It's very. I mean, this now it's leftist, and most Marxists They don't have families, so they come from broken families. So to them, the family is an evil thing. They've never had it really, or they come from very broken sort of backgrounds. And so sure, they want to destroy it. And so if to have like a so-called normal, regular family, they hate this. And that's what they want to destroy. And, communists have always tried to do that. That's one thing like the Nazis did not do. They wanted to control women to have babies and have regular nuclear family. They're all in control, right? And they're all the same. And to me, fascists and communists are the same people. And I think this is borne out by the historical
history.
context.
Yeah, yeah.
Really
And
is.
I think what you mentioned with the young women in Japan that were rebelling against these sorts of top-down mandates, the controlling behavior. What we had, especially when those parks were closed down, was mothers. Mothers were the ones that were speaking up so much again. I mean, they'd been tolerant up until that point, but the most vocal majority around that mandate were mothers. And then there were people going around clipping the little plastic ties that they had. This park is closed. They tied swings together, and then people would clip those, and then other people would write on the back of those signs, this park is open by the taxpayers of this government, so they reverse the government mandates. The people reverse the government mandates, and after about a week or two or so, the government backed down on that one. But now skate parks are still closed, even though so many people are still going to the skate parks. You saw so many people breaking the rules now, because 19 months into this, probably going on to 20 months, people are starting to get really sick and tired of it.